for reaction on the testimony of the gender violence expert, Dr. Lisa Vetton. I'm joined by Phinah Kodisang, CEO of the Soul City Institute. A very good afternoon to you, Phinah. Thanks very much for your time. Just your thoughts based on, of course, what we saw today, and especially for the latter part of yesterday.
Good afternoon, Vuyo, and thank you for having me. You see, the problem is that the defense is there to prove their client innocent, and they'll do anything to discredit whoever will come on the stand that can somehow sway, the decision towards a guilty verdict. So I'm not surprised that, they will come with the technicalities and, the nuanced ways of trying to make sure that anyone who speaks, in support of the victim in this case, would be discredited. It is to be expected.
I'm glad, especially the latter part of your, the very last part of what you just said, because something Advocate Skakane seemed to be harping on, and he asked this several times and saying he wasn't getting an answer, and at some point you had the judge presiding over the matter saying, can we perhaps rephrase in order to, at the very least, get an answer? Which we seem to be saying that the role and significance of the expert witness is to help the tribunal arrive at the correct conclusion based on the correct interpretation of facts and everything else. In other words, less so whether or not the expert witness sides with or is or can be seen to be on the side of somebody.
Yeah, you are asked based on what is presented to you. And based on your knowledge, based on your experience, you then give a response that aligns to what your interpretation, inferring from your experience and what what everything else that is presented interprets, or the message that is interpreted when you see everything that is presented to you. So yeah, I think the case is a complex one. And for me, the most important thing that we need to be discussing, because this case helps us create awareness around the issues of power and, consent. And we need to be driving the conversation more towards helping the public understand, what is at stake when there's power dynamics in any type of a relationship.
How much of it do you think, I don't know here, and I had to second guess people, perhaps has to do with the fact that Dr. Lisa Vetton is, excuse me, an activist in her own right. We use her ever so often here, and so do other people.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with being an activist. I call myself an activist for gender justice. So we look at what are the trends, what are the issues that we are not looking at. Hence, I'm saying, even in this conversation, because there's so much that is said in that tribunal, we need to help the public understand the nuances of what the real issues are in this case, so that should someone find themselves in a similar situation, one, they are not deterred by, the force that is used in the tribunal to intimidate witnesses, and two, they understand clearly if violation has happened, if the line has been crossed. And I believe that the line has been crossed from the minute someone in power approaches a junior staff and they make a move, whether the junior staff agreed, you need to then interrogate that agreement. Was it made out of fear? out of coercion, out of not wanting consequences. And therefore, even if I said yes as a junior, my yes is questionable, because what was behind my yes? Was it fear that I'll lose my job? Was it fear that I'll be more intimidated by this senior? Was it fear that my life will be made miserable anyway? So let me rather say yes and avoid the many other consequences that might come.
Then I'm just wondering how, I don't know if Advocate Kakane has succeeded or not, but if you look at the pattern or how he approached Dr. Vetten right from the start, heaped praises, talking about how intellectual and indeed an expert that she was, only to, at the point, I mean, of course, at which things ended, to really go for her and in essence, discredit her. Because when you say that or suggest that someone is guilty by omission, then you're suggesting that they are not reliable, that they're pursuing an agenda. In other words, people can read all sorts of things. I don't know if you think he succeeded in doing that. And I suppose here that, and I'm hoping my reading of it is actually correct.
It's not the first time we see him do this. Even with the key witness, we saw how he became personal, right? And again, like I said in the beginning, it's a tactic to try and remove the issue from where it sits, to us now doubting Lisa, to us now doubting, the key witness in terms of what they are saying, because everything else is clouded with, are you an expert in this? If not, then we shouldn't believe what you're saying, right? But if we look at the trends and we look at the key issue, which I want to go back to, because for me, what we need to take out of this conversation is, what is our stance on behavior of powerful men, powerful people, in relation to how they treat those that don't have the same power as them. They have the loyalty of those who share spaces with them. So in the court space where you are looking at a president judge, you expect that those around him are probably aligning themselves with him and trying to do anything and everything possible to prove that what he's being accused of, does not hold water. So even when the evidence is there, and we are not even looking at the fact that, the court or the judiciary, in fact, should not be finding itself in this kind of matters, because then we lose trust. And that's one institution that really rides on the trust of the population of South Africa. So when there's doubt even introduced in terms of the behavior of the officials in that space, you wonder then who will go back to such an institution when they are violated, because you are then thinking of how you'll be treated by the lawyers. You are then thinking about, the delays that are introduced because the system is trying to keep one of their own, safe and out of trouble.
I was going to pursue that. The system is trying to keep one of their own, because I thought the whole point of this inquiry was to deal with that particular issue. But just in closing, and very quickly, taking you back where you started, that this was about power relations and situations that people go through, and how difficult it is to prove certain things or to make your points. Do you think Dr. Lisa Vetten's testimony has helped in that regard?
I want to believe that any testimony that, tries to show us, one, the gaps, two, the imbalances, and, the fact that morally it is wrong to even be hearing of such a case, should be seen as a positive in terms of helping the case. Because at the end of the day, whether a consent was given, like I said, true consent where there is power imbalances is not consent, because then you look at the other elements that came with that yes, if it's given as a yes, the fear, the intimidation, the consequences that might come if you say no.
And that's all going to leave it. Let me thank you very much for your time.